In the last video, I was referencing Bible verses where it said, I knew you before you were in the womb or you were wrapped in the womb. But I didn't show any, so I just wanted to show them real quick before I got into this one. Jeremiah 1:5. Then the word of the Lord came unto me, saying, Before I formed thee in the belly, I knew thee. And before thou camest forth out of the womb, I sanctified thee, and I ordained thee a prophet unto the nations. Then said I, Ah, Lord God, behold, I cannot speak, for I am a child. And this is Psalm 139. Psalm 139:13. For thou hast possessed my reins, thou hast covered me in my mother's womb. I will praise thee, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Marvelous are thy works, and that my soul knoweth right well. My substance was not hid from thee when I was made in secret, and curiously wrought in the lowest parts of the earth. And, so that's the part I was referencing in the last video, verse 13. For thou hast possessed my reins, thou hast covered me in my mother's womb. And the reason I have this picture, completely blown out with exposure and contrast, is because I've always noticed and just thought it was weird, the paper's so thin in the Bible that through the page you can see both the reverse writing on the reverse of the same page, and also you can see through the page the writing on the previous page. And sometimes it seems to line up like a weird extra message or something with what it's saying. At least it seems that way to me. I just thought it was interesting. And I did the exposure and contrast on this particular one, Psalm 139, because just a couple parts of this seemed like they lined up so interestingly to me. Like verse 13, for thou hast possessed my reins, thou hast covered me in my mother's womb. And then if you can see the backwards writing, it looks like it says mother's womb. It looks like it says woman and beast. And then it's ever backwards, but it looks like Eve. Thou hast covered me in my mother's womb, woman and beast. And then after verse 14, I am fearfully and wonderfully made, marvelous are thy works, and that my soul knoweth right well. It looks like 7, to him that knoweth right well. Or 7 Old Testament or something. 7's half of 14. Old Testament 7. I don't know, maybe that one's nothing. But it's almost like you can read that last sentence backwards. And that my soul knoweth right well, to him that knoweth right well. My substance was not hid from thee when I was made in secret. And this is a very strange verse, obviously. I've always really liked it, just because, could mean a lot of things. You could just imagine what it might mean. Who knows what it means, but it's definitely super interesting. Verse 15, my substance was not hid from thee when I was made in secret and curiously wrought in the lowest parts of the earth. And the backwards or, seeping through overexposed text behind, it looks like curiously wrought in the lowest parts of the earth and moon. You see that? It looks like it does say moon. It does say moon on reverse on the page below. So it looks like to me something like a secret message or something about, or extra, what is, I was made in secret and curiously wrought in the lowest parts of the earth. What does that mean? Moon and kingdoms of Canaan. You see that below? The lowest parts of the earth, the moon and the kingdoms of Canaan. Reminds me of cities of Cain, the world of men. That's the Satan owns all the kingdoms of the world. Cain gets thrown out with the mark, and he builds the first cities, and Cain's descendants build cities. and that becomes like Satan's kingdom, the kingdoms of the world. That, I guess, then, anyway. The moon. Curiously wrought in the lowest parts of the earth. And the moon. Anyway, yeah, that was I just wanted to show those from the last video. It's just a crazy tangent. Another thing I forgot to say in the last video, the procedures videos, and it was like sort of the most important part that I wanted to say, but I was saying it's not a one-time thing, but it's the start of a new bad habit. Just like these old there's always new and bad habits introduced. Like, that's history. It's just like one bad habit after another, gradually turning our compass towards from life to destruction. And what I mean by these new bad habits being introduced, and it's not just one-time thing. It'll be like a whole new family or something of bad habits, whole new family of demons or genus of demons or something. But like when you have the advent of chemistry and all these chemicals are introduced into the environment, not just one thing, lots of different things, like antiseptics, could be good, could be bad, pesticides, herbicides, like, and fertilizers, a million different applications. So as it expands and expands, it saturates the whole environment. Or just not just like cell phones, but you could just say electronics. That's the new bad habit. It's a whole family of things. Not all good, it's not all bad, but it all has some unnatural or destructive aspect to it. But like electronics, it's a new bad habit that's progressive, not just like a one-time thing. And then like chemical pharmaceuticals, moving away from natural remedies. But these are all like new bad habits, processed foods, all types of different things. And the point I wanted to make was, so I said, I think it'll be a whole new thing, and some of it will seem really good and really cool, just like electronics and chemistry and pharmaceuticals. Like certain parts of it really do work or do something and are impressive in a certain way, whether you approve of them or not. So I was saying, with this new bad habit, if there are going to be things like that, like maybe some cures or intelligence or strength enhancement, or like a cure for blindness or paralysis or whatever, what I was going to say is, why wouldn't they start with something like that to get way more people hooked on board, if that was the goal, instead of this, something that doesn't do anything at all or nothing good, doesn't have any obvious real positive effects. And I think the reason for that, why they don't start with something obviously good, is because they have to ease them into it. And what I wanted to say was, now 100 years down the road, when you say, hey, there's glyphosate everywhere, we don't want these chemicals in our environment, the system, the beast, says back, well, you've already been having all these chemicals in the environment for 100 years, and look, you're fine, so you can't complain of the straw man thing. Same thing with electromagnetics. We don't want to be in all this RF radiation all the time. Well, you already have been living in an electromagnetic soup for 50 years. This is what I meant to say. The reason they don't start with the cure for blindness or paralysis or something that seems awesome is because they want to ease people into it with this tacit agreement they enter into. So however long it's going to be, 5 or 10 years down the road, when something comes along that obviously makes you no longer human, is an obvious transition into something not human, transhuman, or whatever you want to call it, like a synthetic brain, like, oh, you're going to get a new synthetic brain, machine brain that's like way more, a million times more powerful and everything. But people are going to say, whoa, once we get to that point, they're going to say, but if I do that, I'll no longer be human, because it's be obvious at that point. And the system gets to say back, you've already not been human for 20 years, ever since, you know what, the first part of the bad habit, you know? So that's why I think they don't come out with something awesome right off the bat, is they want people to tacitly agree and, like quicksand, get sucked in to where by the time it's blatantly obvious that you're trading away your actual, you know, humanity, they can say, you already did that. That was a long time ago, so just take the synthetic brain. You know, you've already been not human for a long time. So I think that's the reason. That was a big point that I forgot to say. Another random thing I'm just going to cram in here is I was talking about going into the flesh is like going into the cocoon. The cocoon is the physical body, and you enter into this dream world so you can be transformed and born out of the cocoon dream world again, transformed in a different form. And the dream world, I think one of the traditional like terms for the dream world or whatever would be limbo. Everyone's heard that. Limbo. We're in limbo. Like between life and death, in between state, instead of like purgatory or something, limbo. And if you think about the realm being limbo, the dream world, and you think about the game Limbo, you know, the party game Limbo where you go under the stick, and you think about what I said, this life being one big experiment to degrade or gradually turn your compass from life to destruction. But awareness can't be actually destroyed, because any experience must exist within awareness. So any experience you're going to be aware of, so it can't be destroyed. So the game, the realm, the game of limbo is how low can you go? You know, maybe I think that's the joke. Like limbo, the realm is limbo, the dream world, and the game limbo, where they keep lowering the bar, lower and lower, because awareness can't ever actually be destroyed. So it's the game can only ever be how low can you go? How close can you get the bar to the ground? How far low can you squish awareness down? And I just thought that was kind of funny. Yeah, but even though, so awareness can't be destroyed, but it could just exist, like I've talked about in the old Y Machine videos, at a resolution below meaning, a resolution that's too low to derive meaning from, which is hell, just like torture. So awareness can't be destroyed, but it could just exist in like a lake of fire, metaphorically, for eternity, but not destroyed. So that's limbo, the realm and the game. How low can you go? Another mostly unrelated thing, I'm just going to cram into this video now. It's just exploration. It's not necessarily what I believe. And if you really think about it, there's definitely some obvious holes in the theory or problems with it that you'll bump up against, some contradictions with your experience. But anyway, it's just like a general idea. And the idea is it possible that what is actually happening when we look at the TV and any of these big events that have seemed to be really off, to say the least, a little bit off, a little bit weird, not quite organic, and most other people, these events in the TV world, just don't see the weirdness. Other people seem to see something completely different and have no idea what we're talking about. What you see, these really obvious incongruities and problems with these big events or stories. Is it possible that what we are seeing is not what is physically there, but we're seeing with some sort of second sight? like seeing with the third eye or spiritual eyes, or eyes to see and ears to hear, or a sixth sense or psychic vision or something like that. And what if they're all just the same thing? And true spiritual vision, true spiritual eyes, is more like a binary on or off thing. You either see it or you don't. Like a real concrete sense, like color blindness or certain frequency deafness, you can easily test for it. You either perceive it or you don't. Like, and certain people, I remember in high school, they give you like some chemical on a strip, like acid to taste. And some people taste nothing, and some people taste like super bitter, depending on if you produce like this enzyme or not. But it's a real simple test you can do to see if the different types of people. Or like, they have these real simple tests with colors, like certain people see different ranges of colors or have certain types of color blindness where they can't see the pattern in the colored dots. Or like hearing tests, certain people hear these certain frequencies and certain people don't, but it's just like on or off, and it's easy to test for. What if actually like second sight or psychic vision or something, whatever, spiritual vision is more like that? And we never realized it because we just had such an ignorance or just such a misunderstanding or a fanciful imagination of what it actually was, like psychic ability or third eye or spiritual vision or something, that we never even put it together. And at some point, it must have just clicked on. Like, there was no transition. Like maybe in the past, you would know that when you were seeing, like with spiritual eyes or psychic vision or second sight or something. Like you bring a psychic into a house or something and it just looks like a regular dilapidated house, but she's like, oh, there's bodies hanging and there's blood on the walls and there's evil spirits everywhere. And it's like obvious that that's psychic vision because it's like different than what everyone else seeing, but because of the context, you know. But what if something happened in reality, or we hit some point in the timeline or prophecy or whatever, and it just like flipped on, and it's on all the time. So there's no like, no one ever understood that's what was happening because like you weren't going into a certain situation. It wasn't gradual. It wasn't only at certain times. It was just like all of a sudden it flipped on and you were seeing it all the time. And it's just like that color blindness or deafness or that enzyme that allows you to perceive that taste. You're just either seeing it or you're not. And we're actually not seeing what's physically there. We're so ignorant and confused to what, and so conditioned. We've been conditioned like with delusional fantasy that we never even realized what spiritual vision really was, or that we're experiencing it directly. So what most people are seeing and think is normal is what is actually physically appearing. But we don't realize we're not actually seeing its physical appearance. We're seeing its spiritual nature. That's what we're actually looking at. So we don't realize it's like an exaggerated, like metaphor, kind of like a exaggerated, like representation of what is happening, not what it actually physically appears to be. So we don't realize that we're seeing its nature, not its appearance. We're seeing like a metaphor, basically a visual metaphor. Like I said, like in a horror movie, when a psychic walks into the house, it just looks like an old house to the rest of the group, but the psychic sees blood on the walls and ghosts and all this gruesome stuff, because the psychic is seeing and I'm just saying as an example, like in movies and stuff depicting this, like, because the psychic is seeing the nature of the house, and the other regular characters are just seeing its physical appearance. So it's that type of thing that we're seeing on the TV or out in the world. in reality, when you see absurd, weirdness. It seems purposely absurd. It seems exaggerated, like clownish, cartoonish, and that's the whole point. It's like an exaggeration you're seeing of not its physical appearance, but of its nature of the thing, of the person or the entity or the place or whatever. They all have like a nature, and you're seeing like this exaggerated acting out of its nature. It's just like a representation rather than its actual physical appearance. But if that were true, if that whole theory was true, which I'm not saying it is, I'm not even saying I believe that. It's just this is all just an exploration I found in my notebook while I'm still trying to get to the real video. Just looking like maybe I won't even get to it. But so if that were true, what seems to be like physical conspiracy stuff is actually metaphorical spiritual sight. Then if that were true, you would have to ask, then why are there people who claim to be psychics or spiritualists or mystics or gurus or whatever, who claim to have their third eye open or psychic abilities or whatever they call it, but they don't see any of this very weird stuff in the news or events or TV world or even in reality, any of this type of evil that I'm talking about, distortions of reality that conspiracy people see. So that's a problem with the theory. Why there are all these spiritual, mystic people who claim to be psychic and stuff, but they don't see the conspiracy stuff. And that would have to mean that they're full of shit. And if this were true, this theory, they don't actually have any psychic abilities or spiritual vision at all if they can't see the most obvious spiritual manifestations in reality. I'm not saying that that's true or I believe that. I'm just saying that if the theory were true and if you didn't see these things, then you must not really be psychic. That's all I'm saying. So that's the end of that. Is what we're really seeing actually everyone we've all had, or this whatever group of people has had like a literal sense, almost like a physical sense, binary on or off. It's been flipped on, and everything we're seeing that no one else, regular people, don't see, it's because it's not there. It's not physically there. It's basically an imagined, exaggerated projection of the nature of the entity, person, situation, place, or thing. Now I'm into what I actually wanted to do in this video, was to talk about these markups that I showed the first one in the procedures video, where I was talking about what I want and what I need. I'm always aware of what I want, but I'm not aware of what I need to experience, not things like food, but experience regarding consciousness or your fundamental nature. You're aware of what you want, but you're unaware of what you need. And reality exists right at this border, this membrane between awareness and unawareness. And experience is like the friction. Experience is things rising, emerging from unawareness into awareness. That's what experience is. That's what reality is. And what spurred on this set of markups and this presentation of ideas that I'm going to move into now was Vision Quest I went on New Year's Eve into New Year's, just past, 8 months ago or whatever. New Year's 2021. I went on a Vision Quest. I didn't go anywhere. I was just here in the woods alone. But I did write a lot of it down afterwards. I wrote things down, but I'm gonna try not to read from what I wrote and rather just naturally talk about it, explain my experience and what happened. And again, like most things I say, I'm not saying this is the truth, objectively true. I don't expect anyone to believe it. I'm just telling my story, sharing my thoughts and my experience. That's it. And like I said, I did look at what I wrote down afterwards, and it's always so foreign, so shocking. I think this is why it's a really good idea to have a notebook and get in the habit of journaling or writing. Even if it's secret stuff or you're never going to read it or show anyone, just for yourself. Because it's almost like it can be like some secret communication with other unaware parts of yourself or parts of your mind or yourself that you're not aware of. Because like I rarely have dreams or remember my dreams, but frequently I'll find dreams in my notebook or entries in my notebook, my journal, that I have no recollection of at all. Just these crazy, super intense, symbolic, metaphorical dreams and stuff like that I don't remember at all. But it's my handwriting. I know I wrote it, but it's almost like another part of myself and another experience or something that behind the veil that I can't remember or know about directly because it would ruin the game. But somehow we're allowed to have this indirect sort of communication through the notebook where I'll have all these things I never wrote about dreams and visions and all different things. When I go back and read them, it's just like shocking a lot of times. So I recommend you always try and write this stuff down. But anyway, I'm going to try and just talk through it, what happened. New Year's 2021. And first of all, like I've talked about in the past, about there's celestial alignments or big important times that the world, the reality tells you outside, but they're also inside. Like there's times where your cycles all align, and it's like a reflection or like an eclipse inside where you can see out of the Y machine. You can see out of the spinning rings and the projection out to like pure reality or something. So I think a lot of these times where there's any kind of big event where everyone's attention is supposed to be drawn outside, like a big sporting event or a big news event or election night or New Year's Eve, everyone's supposed to be out partying or watching the ball drop. I think that there's a special opportunity at these times for basically viewing like a celestial alignment inside and catching a secret, a glimpse of pure reality. If while everyone else is focused outside, you're alone in the dark, in the woods or whatever, in a vision quest or in prayer or meditation, you can catch these really rare alignments inside. There's certain times where you can gain a great insight or an epiphany. So that's very rarely, once a year, once every couple years. I don't even like doing it, but feel like I have to do it at certain points. Vision quest. Feel like compelled to do it. Like it's my duty, or I know I'm supposed to do it. And it's like a burden kinda, and like scary, whatever, but it's like, it's something you're supposed to do, and you're just gonna keep becoming more uncomfortable unless you do it. You just like the urgency increases. That's just my personal experience. So anyway, this was on New Year's Eve 2021, overnight at nighttime, maybe like 9 p.m. until 5 a.m., 6 a.m. morning time. It was through the night. Made a big fire, all the lights off, no electricity. My wife was gone visiting her family and friends, and I was alone, way in the woods, dark. Made a big fire. Spent a lot of time outside, part of the time inside in front of the fire, but all in the dark in the woods overnight. And basically, what I saw, a part of it was, basically I could see like the upside down. and what I knew to be like the spiritual realm or something, or one of the heavenly realms or the heavens, literally up in the sky. Like the whole sky was like this upside down inverted reflection of the world, kinda. But when you look up there in the reflection, the upside down, you can see like the whole world, not just right where you are. It's like hard to explain, but it's like you're looking in some kind of weird, like one of those cosmetic magnifying mirrors or something. How you can see the whole world, but you can also see like specific people and stuff. It's weird. And it's like a negative, like an exact reflection of Earth. And the impression that I got was that it's not what we think, like some mystical it's literally just the other half of reality. Like there's the heaven and the earth, like in Genesis 1, and the heaven is like the pure code. Like say you're playing a video game, or a computer game, there's what actually appears on the screen, the actual gameplay image, that's Earth. And that's all we're normally aware of. But there's also the code, the actual alphanumeric code that you write to program the video game, which the programmers look at. They don't just look at the finished image on the screen. And they're not two different realms, because one is meaningless without the other. Like there's no point to the code without the game display image, and there is no game display image without the code. They're inseparable. They're just like two halves of the same coin. So seeing the code, seeing the matrix code, or the upside down, or seeing the heavenly realm, this other half upside down of reality, it's not like more real than the image of Earth. It's not more or less real. It's just the other half. Like that seems like we should always be aware of it. But we're under some kind of hypnotism or condition where it's like blocked out of our vision, sort of willingly. That was the impression I got. And the other impression I got was like backstage. Like this is on stage, that was backstage. And nothing just happens by accident on the stage, just like a real play or a TV show. Anything that's going to happen has to be written, the props have to be getting ready, the set has to be set up, has to be written out, and all orchestrated first. And what I saw was that's literally the same way in reality. Is there's like this, the code is like the backstage area. At first you would think it was heaven, maybe, if you didn't know anything. Like that's what I thought, like, oh, it's heaven, but you see it's like filled with demons, like infested with demons. Heaven. But what you got to understand, it's not heaven like where you go when you die. Okay? It's not that. When I say heaven was infested with demons, it's like a much more realistic understanding. Like when we look at Ephesians 6:12, this is what I'm talking about. For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. And this is King James, but if you look at other translations, it shows more clearly what I'm talking about. Like in the NIV translation, it says, but we battle against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world, and against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms. Okay? It says it clearly. And this is what I saw, was like heaven was like infested with demons. But you got to remember, it's really just part of Earth. Like the code, the backstage of Earth. We don't have we're in our human form, we're ignorant of all this stuff. But in the Bible, it talks about the third, fourth heavens. And even if you think about like the Earth, heaven is my throne and the earth is my footstool. Like God's not in heaven, it's just something he created, like his throne, and he sits above it. Like you sit above a throne, you don't like go inside a throne. So in this heavenly realms, not like where you go when you die. Well, maybe, I don't know that, but anyway, in this other the staging area, there's bad people and good people, or like demons and angels, but it's run by demons. Basically, they control the world, the set. They're the ones who change and control everything. So there are angels there, but they don't actually change anything. They just observe. They don't watch or touch anything. And I was basically, felt like I was given this big grand tour, and I was invisible and protected, given this tour by, someone, whether you want to call it the Holy Spirit or Jesus or something. Wasn't talking. It was just like I was made to know things, and also didn't know what they looked like, but it was like a human form with me. But I couldn't tell you like what their face looked like or particularly what they looked like, but just that they were above all that. They were in complete control of the situation, above everything, and they were keeping me safe and protected. And I was given some kind of tour of what was going on. And I like this one in the Berean Study Bible. Against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms. So that's important. It's going to be important in this whole Vision Quest story. It's what it's about, is heaven infested with demons. These spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms that rule this dark world, it says. And so basically I was given a tour of this. That's what the whole Vision Quest was like a big grand tour of this crazy upside down circus backstage thing.
You seen the whole place?
Make this division.
I haven't had a chance to yet.
Tonight.
Come on, I'll show you around.
Excuse me. Where the hell are we?
Backstage at the show, boys. I'll admit it is a little funky, but it serves its purpose. How'd you...
Wait till you see what I'm going to show you now.
Hey, fellas, I got a couple of my buddies here. Thought I'd give them the grand tour. Think we can go inside?
I'm just going to try and explain and say things as they come to me, because it's really difficult to like organize this or put it in a linear order. But the first thing or main thing that was made known to me was not to touch anything in the heavenly realm or the backstage area. Not to touch anything, not to change anything, because it's kind of like you break it, you bought it. It's like the more you change things, the more you get stuck. That's how you get stuck there. And it wasn't like a command. It wasn't commanded not to touch anything or change anything. It was just like, a warning, like to help or concern. Like it was made known to me, like, be careful. Don't touch anything. Don't change anything. You break it, you bought it. That's how you get stuck. More and more stuck the more you change things. Okay, and the other main aspect of it was masks, which I didn't realize any significance of it at the time until like later, thinking about it. Like, oh, it's weird. Oh, it's all about masks. But basically up there in the upside down, it was like everyone is a regular human hiding behind this crazy void demon mask, like live cutout thing, costume, but they like hold it's like a mask. So they have this crazy, you see it's all these crazy, scary, horrible demons, like huge giants, dragons, monstrous, like super real, 100% real. But somehow, like, then you see from the side, it's literally just a regular person, like just some dude or woman, like pretending to be this crazy demon, like carrying it around like a mask. And down on Earth, it was the exact opposite. And everyone was actually these crazy demons, huge demons, holding up a human mask. It was like exact opposite. And the upside down, there really are a human pretending to be a demon behind a demon mask. And on Earth, they're really a demon holding up a human mask, hiding behind a human mask. And everyone always positions themselves. They're always posturing and contorting and positioning, so you never see behind the mask. You only ever see one side of them. You only ever see the demon side in upside down in heaven, and you only ever see the human side on Earth, because they're always purposely positioning themselves, so you can only see the mask. Another aspect to it was, in the upside down, there's an aspect to it where everyone knows that they're really all the same person. Everyone is all the same person, just pretending to be different people. And so everyone up there is insane, partly insane. And down here, everyone's completely insane, because down here we're completely insane because the same thing's happening, where everyone has this feeling that they're all the same person, pretending to be different people, but they pretend not to know that. They block out their awareness of that. On the other side, they're in the awareness of that. So everyone's really, they seem more insane, but they're really only partly insane backstage. Down here, everyone's completely insane because they don't acknowledge it at all. It's like 100% acting. And another just crazy tangent, and I'll just say things as they come to me. The way it occurs, the way it seems to me, is that there's one awareness, the spirit that only God can breathe into a creature. It all comes from one source, one breath, one spirit, awareness. But individuality is real with God, in the context of God. There is individual consciousness. But basically, in order to create this dream realm and for us to have this collective experience here, we all have to be tied in to a single artificial mind, exterior. If you imagine you're playing a massive multi-online game like World of Warcraft or something, you're running that program on your computer. That's your version of the computer. But then you're connected to a server, okay, that is running its own master version of the game. So it can correlate all the individual computers, each running their own program version of the game. It has to make them coincide. It has to create a matrix for them to interact within the context of. And any differences between the individual programs, the perceptions of all individual players, have to be compromised somehow into one collective game, one collective display. So maybe your computer's slower, you're lagging, you see yourself walking a mile ahead, way up this hill, but then you lag, you skip all over the board. That's what other people see, that you're lagging and you're like stuttering through it, because that's not what you see on your computer. But the master AI computer has to alter the master reality program in a compromise between your version of the game and everyone else that's playing's version of the game. So in order for us to come into this physical dream world, cocoon, limbo, we need that master server program, to the matrix for all our individual experiences to relate through. And that is what would be Satan, or the Lord of this world. If you want to think of it as just an entity or a machine, an artificial intelligence, it's like the main server that your individual computer communicates with. So you have like two minds. One is your real individual mind, the awareness like created by the source, the one God. And then you have your other mind, which is the collective mind of this dream world, which is like the Satan AI architect program, the architect of this realm, this physical reality. So that's an illusion that you can be freed from by God or the Holy Spirit, Jesus, or at least I felt that I was. By being given this understanding allowed me to overcome this insanity that everyone else is operating in, where they think that there really is no individual consciousness. They're just a solitary entity existing in solipsistic insanity, pretending to be different people. When the truth is that one mind is not your true mind. It's the mind of the world, the Satan AI mind. And there's another organic collective mind, which is God, which we're not directly aware of here in physical existence, but that allows both true individual consciousness as well as a collective context in which to interact and exist within, which is God. Okay, the next thing I can think of to mention is so everyone looked like these crazy demons, and the bigger the demon mask and scarier and evil the demon, which is really just a mask, the more power they had, the more in control they were of the backstage and thus the earth, like the more control they were of reality. But also the more stuck they were. They were like lower down. It's hard to explain, but it's like also goes up to down, like denseness. And but the biggest, craziest demons that had the most power, they were behind them. They were all just regular people, and like the biggest one would be just some like nerdy little dude, computer dude with glasses or something. And but the way they get power there is by making their mask the biggest and the scariest, and it like corresponds on the stage on Earth, on stage, to like what we see with politicians or like dark rituals, like and doing all these horrific things to gain power on Earth. That's just like a mirror of what's happening backstage, where it's like they act the most evil. They act like the biggest demon, which is like this mask. But they're all regular people. It's just like nerdy little people, and the weakest ones are like the biggest demons, really, behind the mask. I guess it's like the Wizard of Oz or something like that. But there's also angels, like from lower to higher angels, but the difference is that the angels don't change anything. They don't touch anything. They're just there, just being there and like observing. But they're basically completely detached from the events. The demons are the only ones that try to control it, but they're also the ones that get stuck. It's like they're hurting themselves. And they're literally hurting themselves because they have this awareness that they're all really the same person, pretending to be different people. So when they're doing these horrible things to other people, they're experiencing it also as doing it to themselves, this solipsistic insanity. And it's like a rationalization for doing it, and it's like this downward spiral feedback loop, how they sink deeper and deeper and gain more and more power and control in the earth. Okay, and the next thing I should mention is I was also the same way. I was also looked like this crazy demon, void, negative, light demon thing, just like everyone else. This big demon, which is really like a mask. I was the same way as everyone else, except I was invisible and protected. I was kind of just somehow invisibly going through the whole thing. But I was the same way. Up on in the sky, in the heavens, in the heaven, I was, this crazy demon mask, which is actually a person behind it. And down here, I look like this crazy demon hiding behind a human mask, just like everyone else. And the person I was with, the good protector guide, was the only one who wasn't like that. The only entity that didn't have a mask and didn't have this dual human crazy demon aspect. Everyone else was either the angel human or demon human duality mask thing. Okay, and these markups, the markup I'm showing on the screen, if you've watched my videos for a while, you'll know I've probably made hundreds of variations of this basic same format of markup, same basic model, back like a year ago in the Y Machine videos. And like in this one, when I say it was like the code, the backstage, and the on stage, where I was showing this in the last video, where it's like awareness and unawareness, and experience, reality is this membrane that separates them. That's reality, is this paper thin membrane. And experience is things emerging through this membrane from unawareness into awareness. That thin membrane is reality. That's collective experience. And you can look at it like I've done the projector thing in the past. It's like there's the light, the pure light, projecting, and then there's the screen, the blank screen, which the image is projected on, and that projected the actual movie. That's like earth, reality. Then there's the light, which is like awareness or upward heavenly realms, super conscious, and then there's the screen, the blank material, the matrix that it's experience displayed on, and that's like the subconscious. And I suppose our individual consciousness, like our pattern, would be like the film, the light shining through us, through our film, onto the matrix screen, is what creates the image of reality, of what we experience. So, when I read the very beginning of the Bible, Genesis 1:1, in the beginning God created the heaven and the earth. That, to me, would be like this. That's the very first verse in the Bible. In the beginning God created the heaven and the earth. And the earth was void and without form. So it's just created the code and the display. But there is no code yet, and there is no display. It's void and without form, like a computer that's turned off. And the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. So in the first verse, there's two aspects mentioned, the heaven and the earth. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. So that's like the code and the display. Then in the next line, and the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. A third element is introduced. Heaven and earth, now we have the deep. The earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. So, to me, it's this three-part. The experience of reality is just this paper, this membrane that separates awareness and unawareness. You could look at it like the heaven and the earth. And when we add in the third aspect, the deep, the waters, darkness was upon the face of the deep. That's like everything that's in unawareness is the deep. And heaven is the light, the awareness of the projector. The earth is displaying nothing. It's without form and void because there's been no action or code yet. And the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. That's this membrane. The face of the waters is reality. It's earth, in my understanding that right now. It's this membrane that separates, this thin membrane that separates awareness and unawareness. And things pass through this membrane into awareness. That's what we experience as reality. So that would be these three aspects. Would be heaven up above, the deep below, so the superconscious up above, the subconscious, what we're unaware of below, and earth in the middle. The deep, the heavens, and the earth. Another aspect of it that I feel like I should mention was just the realness of it, or how it's not like you would expect, like not fantastical, even though it is fantastical, but it was the impression that it's not some mystical thing. It's like something that you should, really obvious, that you should be aware of, and something really real, just as real as this half of reality or experience. The heaven and the earth, like this heavenly realm, this backstage, upside down, other half. First of all, it's like the whole sky. It's like that's what the sky is supposed to be. It's supposed to be like the earth, and then the whole sky is supposed to be this, like, everyone's aware of it. It's like the other collective half where we're like arranging what we want to happen, not by writing out scripts and physically building props, but like the feeling of what the events are going to feel like, what the experience is going to feel like. It's hard to explain, but you like plan it out, like arrange it, like it's going to be like this feeling, and then a release, and then a build up, and this resistance here, and then it's like the movements of a song or something, more than actually writing words. But anyway, it's really real. We're supposed to know about it. Like there's something wrong that we don't all see it, just so obvious. Like as if someone literally acted like they had never seen the sky before. Like you went out with your friend, let's walk down to the park or something. They're like, oh, what is that? Everything's blue up above and there's white things in it and a bright ball. You're like, the sun? The whole blue thing. You're like, the sky? They're like, oh, the sky, oh my gosh, where did that come from? Like if someone acted like they never saw the sky before, how they'd be either lying or in some sort of insanity, you know? It felt like that. Or like you live your whole life in the village in the shadow of a mountain, a huge, awesome mountain. It dominates the whole skyline. And your neighbor, one day, you're outside talking, and all of a sudden he goes, oh, what is that? And he points at the mountains. What is that giant rock? Where did that come from? Like as if he had never seen the mountain before, you know? It would be like that. It was that type of thing. Like it's just right there. Like we're supposed to see it. But there's some corruption entered into this collective mind server of the reality game that we're all collectively tied into. Some corruption entered into the program, into the server, which we experience as shame and confusion, unawareness, and even though it's a lie, because it's not really us, it's this external server of the game, this AI world mind. But that corruption that entered into the program, it manifests as the experience of shame and confusion, cause us to turn away from the truth. We can't face that, the corruption, the shame enters in, the corrupted aspect, so we block it out of our awareness, which is like this lying or insanity, or why we can't see the obvious other half of reality, the heaven, and we're only aware of the earth. But the big aspect of it was just super real, like obvious, not like a fantasy book or something, just like hard to explain, just how regular, not regular, but like, I don't know what to say about it, just obvious. And there were many other mind-boggling parts to it, experiences, aspects of it. I couldn't possibly explain them all, but at a certain point I was moved to go outside from the fire out into the woods in the dark. It was probably, maybe this was 1 or 2 a.m. or something like that. And this is, I think, what spurred what I want, what I need stuff, or aware of what I want. I'm not aware of what I need, is this experience outside. And in this similar markup, you can see I have it, Heaven and Hell. And I want to explain, I'm not talking about religious heaven and hell, or where you go when you die, or any objective thing. This is just conceptually, like what it means right now to you in your experience, to me in my experience, just purely conceptually. The intersection of what I'm aware of and what I want, I experience as heaven. I imagine to be heaven. Everything what I'm not aware of, but what I need, all the bad things, the experiences that move you forward, that you were unaware of needing, that's what I imagine to be hell, is unawareness. And if I go back to this one, that you could also look at as the intersection of what I want and what I need is reality. Aware of what I want, unaware of what I need. Obviously, I don't want everything I'm aware of, but I am aware of everything I want. But there's many things, possible experiences in the conceptual realm that I'm aware of, but I don't want. But what if they do occur in reality? Something I was aware of could happen, but I didn't want it. It occurs anyway. It turns out it was must have been something I needed, but wasn't aware of needing. And the way I imagined it up above in awareness is always not reality. It's not how it will actually emerge and experience. That'll be completely different. And I'll realize that it was an illusion all along, and I never really was aware of the experience that I didn't want. It was actually something I was completely unaware of, which I needed. So anything which occurs is going to be either what I want or what I need. And in this last one, I experience what I want. When I experience what I want, conceptually, that's heaven. When I experience what I don't want, conceptually, that's hell. Just subjectively. Okay? And the thing is that when we experience what we need, we experience it as suffering. And it, like I said before, it doesn't have to be torture. It just means challenge, resistance. But you could call it suffering. And whenever we're suffering, we're actually moving into awareness, out of unawareness. We always experience that as challenge, suffering. It's always difficult to go up, easy to go down. Hard to climb, easy to fall. Chutes and ladders. So when we experience what we want, on the other hand, we experience satisfaction, but this is actually moving from awareness into unawareness. And neither of these are actually good or bad because we need them both. That's actually what reality is. My experience at least, reality is just the membrane that separates awareness from unawareness. So when we experience what we don't want, we experience it as suffering, hell, but we're moving into more awareness. We're always more aware when we're suffering or when we're challenged. Those it's most real. We're always most present, most aware when we're suffering. And when we're experiencing what we want, you finally get what you want or your achievement, that's when it's a feeling of release, relaxation, and falling into unawareness. That is the feeling of satisfaction, actually corresponds to destruction, while suffering actually corresponds to creation. And all experiences, in this model, just in this way of thinking about it, would always be on one side or the other, either be oriented towards satisfaction or suffering, because all experience is moving through this membrane from unawareness to awareness or awareness to unawareness. That's what experience is the friction moving through that membrane, which is Earth. So neither one is bad. It's really a cycle, just moving up and down through the membrane. And you can see that there must actually be an infinitesimally small point in the very center where you're not in heaven or hell or suffering or satisfaction. Like maybe that's the middle path, or people call the 0 point. And you can almost look at this as a propeller. When you see that's all just as a necessary part of reality, when you can move to the center of this, creation, destruction, suffering, satisfaction, moving from awareness into unawareness, loss of awareness, gaining awareness, this whole thing you can see almost just as a propeller that just spins, always cycles. You don't have to be identified with the cycle. You can be, again, like the lever puller. Like you're the person who operates the car radio. You choose what to listen to. You're on the ship, and this is your propeller that moves you forward. So neither one is good or bad. They're both necessary together. They create what we experience as reality. And what I was getting at is, I said during the Vision Quest, when it was pitch black late at night, I was moved to go outside into the woods. And I had this experience where it was like the whole environment around me, the whole world around me, like warped and morphed into like a form that was like an entity. Like the scariest thing you've ever seen, like this crazy void demon. Like I thought I was in the world, but I was actually inside this demon, was like creating this bubble around me, pretending to be the world. And like I was in the belly of a whale or the belly of the beast. And I was actually inside this thing. It was presenting the whole reality to me. Like the whole world morphed, hard to describe it, morphed into this crazy void demon that was reality. And I realized that that's what I was existing inside of. And it was all the dark, it was, the pure darkness. And then it changed into pure goodness, beautiful light. Same thing, the whole environment had become an entity, a sort of form that's impossible to describe, and it became good. Love, everything that was good. And it was obviously made, this Isaiah 45:7 wasn't read to me or told to me or anything, but this is the concept that I was being made to know. Isaiah 45:6, that they may know from the rising of the sun and from the west that there is none beside me. I am the Lord, and there is none else. I form the light and create darkness. I make peace and create evil. I, the Lord, do all these things. And so that was like the lesson that was being made known to me, and it was almost like a candle. Like I was in the center of this candle, and that candle was my reality, and it was also God. Like it was my bubble of experience, which started out as the darkness and changed into the light. And it was this idea that people think, oh, God created everything you see and hear. God created the whole world, every experience you have, every hair on your head. But it's not just everything you see, it's literally your modes of experience themselves were created. The framework itself, which we can't even conceive of, like fish in water, the modes of experience themselves were created. And it was shown to me like God is like the sea that you swim in. It's what makes existence possible. It's what makes our individual existence possible. Like in that pure light, if it was ever present with our individual awareness directly, it would be just everything would be absorbed into it. It'd be so bright that there could be no differentiation. Everything would be dissolve into the light. It would be so bright. So it was like God in Genesis 1 creating the heaven and the earth and putting up this veil between himself and creation is like he is reality for us. He it's the medium in which I exist. He is the bubble of experience. He created the mode of experience. And it's like in the Bible, it talks about the lamb sacrifice from the foundation of the world. Like God, the sacrifice he makes in separating himself from us, it allows us to be individual instead of being absorbed or overshown. Allows us to actually grow as a true organic individual consciousness. So that veil is necessary, the way everything works in the darkness and the light, and the good and the evil. And the veil is necessary because if present, it would overwhelm everything else. And another way to look at this, reality being the membrane that separates awareness and unawareness, or organic and artificial, they're all just different modes of experiencing it. You could also look at it as reality is the intersection of intention and random chance, which is like the matrix. The matter is the mechanical forces, and then there's the pure spirit, pure matter and pure spirit. The intersection is earth, or reality, or experience. But it's the opposite of our intuition, where the lower below down is more physical. The more physical, the more matter, the more material it is, the less real, you could say, the less ideal, the less perfect. And actually the less material, the above, the immaterial, is what's really real. The ideal, the perfect concept is what's really real. And experience, earth, is realities, that intersection of the real and the unreal, of the real idea, concept, ideal, the intersection with the matter, the stage, the matrix. And that intersection is what produces reality. And I'll give a couple examples of what I mean. One example of this is how did the first idea of cube or sphere come about, or any of these things, triangle? And you can imagine, you've seen them yourself. You might see a rock, maybe a huge rock, whatever, out in nature. However it was formed, that's almost a cube. Almost. And you say, wow, look at that. And it gives you the idea of a perfect cube. Even though it's not, it's close, and you infer the reality up above the ideal perfect cube. But that will never exist in reality. Nothing. We never have a perfect cube. There'll always, in any drawing, even made by a computer or machine, there'll always be some, if you go down to the smallest scale, some imperfection. Maybe other than the sun and the moon, or a rainbow is a half circle, and maybe that's why they're celestial objects. Or anyway, like I've talked about before, a cup. You imagine a cup, the ideal cup, this super consciousness, perfect idea or concept. But when it comes into reality, it comes through the filter matrix to emerge into reality through the membrane. It is the intersection with random chance, mechanical forces. The cup, just like everything else, never going to be perfect. It's never going to be exactly how you imagined that ideal, real cup in the superconscious. So another way to explain it is like artwork is the most obvious example. And it's almost like all art is just imitations of nature. Not imitations, but reflections back. Like that's what all art is. Like musically, they're just pleasing to us subjectively intervals because they mirror certain intervals that occur in nature. Just like architecture is most pleasing to us, in some way it's an elaboration on natural forms. It's difficult to conceive of art that's not of some natural form, even if it's a human form or whatever. It's always an imitation. But what I mean, the intersection of intention and mechanical force or random chance, or the superconscious and the subconscious, and how the idea of the thing is actually more real than the actuality, the physical manifestation, is a sculpture or a painting or a piece of music for that matter. It's like the most obvious example. There's what the artist imagines. First, they have to have an idea for a painting or a sculpture, right? Or a song or a piece of music. And that exists somewhere in the superconscious. That's perfect. That's the perfect ideal. It's their idea before they ever make the painting or the sculpture or piece of music. But what happens is random chance is introduced when it's being actually physically created. Every work of art is actually a combination of a million small strokes of chance, accidents, happy mistakes. Anyone who plays music knows that some of the most awesome things will be mistakes, random chance that you never could have done. You couldn't have done twice if you wanted to. So what we call reality, the actual physical manifestation, is actually the ideal, which is real, passing through the mechanical, random, unreal filter matrix, and everything that we experience as reality is going to be the intersection of those. So any painting, sculpture, or piece of music you create is actually going to be the synthesis of that perfect, ideal, original, real concept you had, and random chance, the mechanical force of the matrix. And reality is the synthesis of those two things. And that would be like heaven, the deep, and the earth. The earth is the intersection of the heaven and the deep, the waters above and the waters below. And this whole construct really is a veil behind which is would be God, like source of everything that is, awareness, what is, everything that is. And basically that matrix, that artificial matrix, which the pure reality ideal must be filtered through is what is necessary in order to have individuality, individual consciousness, and collective experience. Because in a total isolation universe of solipsistic insanity, then anything you believed could be reality, could be actuality, I should say. They could be identical rather than having to be a synthesis of random chance. But in order for us to have a collective individual experience, like I said, like the massive multiplayer online game, we need a matrix through which to interact to align all our individual experience. So we need this matrix in order for us to be individuals and relate through. So a matrix isn't inherently bad. It's just a context in which to relate and to create a consensus that allows individual collective experience. Without that, without this synthesis of random chance, if you had pure will, you couldn't have individuality. We need to be, in order to have individual consciousness, awareness needs to be separated by this matrix, this grid. It needs to be partitioned into sections, and that is the matrix through which we interact. And so through this process, the filtering, the intersection of awareness and unawareness, individual consciousness across an infinite spectrum of different individual wants and needs, which all have to be converged through this consensus matrix, through the convergence of active will, intention, with random chance, mechanical forces of nature. The convergence of those produces this infinite manifold of collective experience generating meaning eternally. That's this propeller turning, generating meaning. It's a meaning generator. An eternal meaning generator. A perpetual meaning machine. That's what I was trying to think of. Perpetual motion machine.
Expectations are meant to be. Expectations never meant to be. We currents flashing in the mirror, streaming towards the sea.